Hi there, I am Sarah Jane Case, and I'm the host of your new favorite show, Enneagram and Coffee. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the beautiful and hard parts of being human. We discuss the Enneagram, a personality map that is taking over the world, for increased self-compassion, personal growth, and healthier relationships. Listen to Enneagram and Coffee on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy, a literary podcast where we deep dive into the writings of your favorite novels. This winter, we are hosting a book club while we prepare for our 10-part literary analysis of Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass.
This is Jack.
And I'm Amy.
And each week, we'll discuss one book from our winter book club roster. By using our literary backgrounds, we'll provide our flash analysis of each book, as well as discuss listener thoughts.
This is part 2 of this week's episode, where we're talking about The Witch Collector by Charissa Weaks. And just as a reminder, I'm still at my mom's place, so please excuse any bad sound quality.
So let's talk a little bit about Alexis.
All right, let's jump into Alexis.
I mean, unless you had any other thing you wanted to...
No. Everyone likes Alexis.
What are your thoughts on Alexis? Amy's face. I think we just got her thoughts on Alexis.
So this goes actually to something folks didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like how short-lived the enemies portion of the book was, and how instant the attraction was. I don't know if I agree. I mean, this isn't a true enemies to lovers.
Angry
Jack
puppy.
and I, it's an angry puppy to lovers.
Yeah.
You know, Raina's yelling at the wall, brandishing a weapon.
Yeah.
Just yelling.
Stabbing a scarecrow.
Yeah.
And he's like, and he just goes by every year being like, she's pretty.
Well, yeah. And, oh, I like her passion. Like,
Yeah.
I like her anger.
He's like, maybe in another world I'd write her poetry. And I was when he said that, I was like, nope, we draw the line somewhere.
He says that twice. Once
I know.
at the beginning of the book, once at the end.
What I do like at the very end, he goes, and maybe in another world has to be this world, where he decides like, I'm gonna go for her, which is sweet.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
even though his dumb little like everything. Anyway, but yeah, like people did not like that immediate switch, but like it does make sense on his part.
Yeah.
Her part, it could have used a little bit more finessing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could have used more time, more angry puppiness. I did appreciate that she starts out hating him.
Yeah.
I did appreciate that he's the one who's attracted to her first,
Mm-hmm.
instead of the opposite way around. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. But I think that's the extent of where that goes. Alexis, I don't know. I think I foresaw all of his twists and turns coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything felt predictable for me. Not in a bad way. I think the rate at which the information was revealed was acceptable.
Yeah.
He's very noble. I don't know if I liked that or not. Maybe I wanted him to be more problematic.
I love a problematic character. So going back to the pacing of their love before I go back into him, because I wanted to kind of say something. If I were to have written this or given notes, I would have liked her first moment of attraction to him not be until they were in their little Garden of Eden situation.
Mm.
At that point, she was like ready to have sex with him.
Right.
And while I love that scene, I think I would have been happier with her not realizing her own attraction until there. And I know that we have to get it at a moment at the very end of her being like, no, I'm going to choose you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could have still done a variation of that. I think that they still like as much as I love the sex scenes and everything, I think that the attraction could have started there, maybe have a sex scene at the end, maybe not be so like I am halfway in love with him, but just to be like, you know what, I'm going to like, I feel something that I've never felt before.
Mm-hmm.
It's a kernel, it's a spark, and I'm going to go forward with this type thing. Like, I think that she doesn't have to be in love with Alexei to not choose Flynn?
Flynn, one
Yeah,
of the
like,
two.
I don't think she has to have been in love with him to not choose him.
No, I completely agree. I think we're aligned on the fact that she didn't have to become attracted to him or recognize her attraction as quickly. She didn't have to act on that attraction as quickly. I would have been okay with it being more of a slow burn.
Yeah.
I would have been okay with him claiming her and them not being in love.
Yeah, I agree. I would have preferred that.
Yeah, I would have enjoyed the problematicness of that
Yeah.
and seeing how that unfolds later on. I would have preferred Reina saying, "I'm going to help you find the king, not because I'm in love with you, but because I love and trust my sister. And even though I don't understand it and I'm mad about it, this is important to her."
Yeah.
Like, the beginning started because of her love for her sister. I wanted it to end because of her love for her sister, not
Yeah.
because of her love for Alexis.
And I mean, at the very end, she does tell her, like, "I ride into battle for this country. I ride into battle for my sister, and I ride into battle for you." I think that the emphasis on the "for you" part didn't need to happen.
I don't,
I
yeah, I don't.
you
I
know,
don't.
I think it would have been I don't think there should have been any sex in here. I think the final moment should have been a kiss, and then worry that Finn it was going to show up, and then her being like, "Hey, I still don't love him," because I feel like that would have been she already said that she doesn't care about him because 1, he silenced her, 2, he tried to stop her from being like, going and exploring this world. She said at the very beginning that they were never compatible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that it would have been more impactful for me of, like, this is a woman who's made her own choice on another man a long time ago, and liking someone new doesn't have a sway on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you. You and I are aligned. No sex needed to occur. Maybe some fondling that gets interrupted so that we
Yep,
get a
yep.
good, like, angsty moment.
Yep,
Love
yep.
it. Great. Wish that had happened. I didn't enjoy the end sequence when they do have sex. I didn't like how upset she got about Alexis and the king's lives being intertwined.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
feel like that was realistic. I felt like it was creating drama for the sake of drama. And I
Mhm.
didn't like how she's like, "I can't live with this. I can't possibly fall in love with someone who could die at any moment. I'm going to go tell him. And then, you know what? I showed up in a robe. I'm going to tell him so hard."
And then I'm gonna fuck him so hard instead.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I didn't love that. I felt it was completely unnecessary.
Especially the, like, "I don't wanna be with someone who can die at any instant." Babe, that's life. That's like every
Yeah,
other person out there. That's not a unique thing. Yes,
right.
his life is intertwined with another being, but, I think the, like, discovering that you have a god that you absolutely hate and the fact that he's immortal is, like, the bigger issue here.
Yeah, yeah, completely agree. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I could explain it away, but that she's been abandoned by so many people in her life, right?
Mhm.
Her father died suddenly, her mother died suddenly, her sister was taken from her. She doesn't want another person taken from her. Understood, but I don't think she would also willingly choose to leave that person.
Yeah.
So, I think it
Yeah.
would have been more convincing if she did not have as strong feelings for him, if that
I
makes
agree.
sense.
Yeah. So going back to like kind of what you're saying where Alexi like,
Alexis.
very Alexis like how he's very honorable,
Mhm.
and does that make us like him? I think I enjoyed that he's a different type of character in the
Mhm.
sense that he's noble, he's kind. There's nothing wrong with him. You know what I mean? Like and I think it's refreshing in a world full of like quote unquote morally gray characters,
Yeah.
you know? But is he my book boyfriend? I mean, who am I to say no to anyone to be my book boyfriend? But like
He's I think you hit it on the head for me, though. He's practically perfect,
yeah, yeah.
and I don't believe a man like that exists.
Well, he did the thing that like we have harped on every single episode of like previous books. He would not have sex with her until he disclosed the truth about himself.
Yeah.
And I respect that.
I do
And
respect it.
so it's like, what do we get when we get a character who addresses all the things we bitched about in the previous?
Maybe he needs to be less nice.
Okay, what is it that about him?
I mean,
I
the problem is, for me, he has no flaws.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe he can be less attractive. Maybe he can, I don't know, yell at her because she can't yell back. Maybe I
I
don't
know.
know.
I'm genuinely trying to think, but like what's the big impression of him? Like what's the thing that we can walk away from is that he's just like a really good guy. He's just like really comforting. He's saying that he's going to be selfish when it comes to her and he's going to protect her and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think like I don't feel like we need to perpetuate horrible male characters.
Yeah.
I'm on board with bringing male characters who are able to step it up in a way
Yeah.
that, let's go back to From Blood and Ash. Like you and I had a lot of issues with what's his face
Yeah.
there.
It's true.
So like I'm happy we don't have that again, but like if we have this and we have a type of character, male character where we don't have those problematic things, what I need from the book then is higher stake plot.
Yeah, that's
If
fair.
I don't need to have him to be the dramatic thing, and I'm okay if their relationship isn't the dramatic thing, like that's not
Mm-hmm.
the thing that drives all of it. It's not like his choices. I'm gonna come back to compare it from Blood and Ash, and I don't know if that's like a fair thing to do, but our podcast, our rules. And that character, I cannot remember his name. It was Poppy and
Finn?
No. From Blood and Ash guy?
Oh, Hawk?
Hawk, thank you. Yeah. So when you think about Hawk from Blood and Ash, their relationship, the plot twists and the turns was based off of his deception and
Mm-hmm.
off of him and their dynamic.
Yeah.
When you look at the plot twists here, it's about some of like, truth about him,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not mean about it. He doesn't have sex with her without telling her.
Right.
And it's more about like the other outside forces than anything
Mm-hmm.
else.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to do that and have a really honorable male character, which I do want more of, make the stakes higher then.
Yeah. I completely agree. The stakes just were not high enough
Mm-hmm.
to that I'm trying to invent higher stakes by making the male more problematic instead of accepting that he doesn't have to be problematic.
Yeah, like everything was smooth sailing, even though they
Mhm.
were like not smooth sailing, even though they were, constantly being threatened and fighting for their lives. You know what he reminded me of? Did you ever watch Sailor Moon? Did I make you watch Sailor Moon?
I never watched it. I did read it.
Oh, okay. He reminds me of Tuxedo Mask.
Yeah.
And like the second time he got stabbed, and he even says like, "I'm tired of being stabbed." And I think she saves him like a third time, and it just reminded me a lot of like Tuxedo Mask, where like he's just a really good guy who just needs a lot of help sometimes.
Yeah.
He just needs to be saved a lot.
He does, which is funny because he's very strong.
Uh-huh.
I understand he's suppressing his magic.
Yeah.
Or using all his magic to suppress a god inside him.
Yep.
I don't know.
All right, let's look at other comments. Oh, the magic system.
Mm-hmm.
So let's shift to some of the positives that people had, and that was the magic system. First off, there is one. Yay! That's huge.
I loved it because there's a system that is easy to understand but doesn't feel simple.
Yes.
If that makes sense. I liked the complexity of the singing. I liked how Charissa addresses that with a character who has no voice.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I really thought that was actually very beautiful. And I enjoyed her journey of discovering that she doesn't actually need a voice.
Yeah.
She doesn't even need her hands sometimes.
Yeah.
To be able to use her magic. And I thought that I really enjoyed that. I thought that was very, very well done.
Yeah, I really enjoyed how the magic was described. Like she's pulling at strings, at threads. Like even when she would heal some people, like she said that she could like imagine the skin weaving together, the threads weaving. And then the fact that she could imagine, when she could see when something was wrong with someone, and it's like, it wasn't weaving together correctly, and or she calls it like little death, and she could feel the little deaths inside her.
Yeah.
I felt like that was pretty good. I mean, it was a lot of info dump at the very beginning, and I didn't realize just like how aggressive an info dump it was until I was like re-listening. I'm like, oh man, but I wasn't mad at that. I wasn't mad at. I think that when you get a lot of magic systems in this in books nowadays, you just kind of get like generalized magic. I think we are understanding limitations. That's another one that we don't always get is in other books is like, what is everyone's limit?
Yeah.
What are they capable of doing?
Yeah.
And, the fact that she is capable of doing some fire, but, she's not able to necessarily grasp that entirely. I hope that as the series continues, and because I do want to go back and I have the rest on Audible. As I finish it, I hope that the magic continues to develop, especially where at the end I was a little confused about the final battle, but it wasn't really a battle between her and the evil king, and she was like holding on to her sister and the Winter King, and then it was like a tug of war, and then so there was a lot of stuff. It was all mental things happening, so I wasn't quite sure what was happening, but I hope I think that it'll be clarified later, but that helps with the world building. I'm going to do another world building shift if you don't mind.
No, go ahead. Excuse us while we hydrate and you listen to this ad.
It is the holiday season, and even though I'm single, there are still too many men I have to shop for.
And at this rate, time is running out and we need to find gifts pronto.
There's nothing that I feel better about than having most of my gifts already done by the end of November. And you can too feel that kind of comfort and get the perfect gift for any man in your life with the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver from Manscaped. Not only is there one, but you're going to get 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, and it helps your guy get that like super smooth shave. Or if you want some stubble, keep the stubble. I'm a fan of the stubble. What can I say?
And holiday time feels stubble appropriate.
It is stubble appropriate.
The Chairman Pro has Flex Adjust technology, which helps achieve that baby soft shave if that's what he's going for, and avoids the nicks and cuts that make him look like the Grinch.
One of my exes was the most disgusting shaver in the world, and honestly, he should have had this because the Chairman Pro is also waterproof, which means he can use it in the shower. So think about how safe and simple that cleanup is.
The Chairman Pro is powerful enough to tackle up to 5 days of no shave. So if he is trying to convince you that he needs to grow out his beard and you're just not into it,
day 5, you can make that go.
Gift all the men, whoever they may be, in your life with the ultimate grooming experience by Manscaped and get them the Chairman Pro package for the holidays. It's a thoughtful and practical gift that they'll actually use and love.
Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code BOOKTALK. That's BOOKTALK at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code BOOKTALK. BOOKTALK at Manscaped. I think this is something that I saw in the positives, and I saw people say it in the negatives. The gods. And the backstory of the gods.
Yeah, that was a huge info dump.
Yeah.
That was a huge info dump, 75% of the way through the book?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't process it.
I had to restart, re-listen multiple times, and this was my second go-through.
Yeah.
And maybe that's an audible versus physical book thing, that it was harder to grasp. But I mean, there's a fair amount of comments in the negatives that people were saying that they just couldn't figure out what was going on with all these gods.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a basic understanding, but there was so much information that I'm sure is relevant later, but I feel like it could have been pared down.
Yeah.
Like, we know by the end of the book that Raina loves to read and that she hasn't had access to books.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff about the gods could have been read later and could have come up later. All she needed to know were the basics.
Yeah.
To know what was going on inside of Alexis and why that was relevant.
Yeah, I mean, it was a whole lot of, like, and then this person was in love with this person, and then this person was in love, and then this one was a
But
and
they
it
were
does
separated by this one, and this
yeah,
one was
and
cursed.
then they went back, and I mean, and it doesn't help that all these names are, like, fantasy names too,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so I'm like, just alright, so Bob was in love with Linda.
Yeah. Let's just dumb it down real
I need
much.
it dumbed down real hard for this, like, deliver to me in a way of gossip, you know what I mean? Like, just say it
Mm,
like, "Oh my god, you would not believe the tea that I just heard." It it's but that being said, it is very rich for the world. It is you do not get world building like that often with kind of romanticities like this, right? It reminds me very much so of, like, more, high fantasy books
mhm,
of saying,
mhm.
like, here's a whole other I she could almost, like, write a whole other book based on what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. It did feel like there was a lot of backstory developed and a lot of thought put
Yeah.
into the history and the legends of this world or this continent, and it makes me believe that it will be relevant later. It
Yeah.
makes me believe that there is significance and will come into the story in the future. I think for me, it's like it just bogged it down too much.
Mhm. Mhm.
We If we look at A Court of Thorns and Roses, we know the all we know is the spring court, and that's all we care
Yeah.
about.
Yep.
We don't think about the other courts until we have to think about the other courts. And
And we
so,
know about the other courts.
yeah,
Like,
we know they
it's not like
exist.
yeah, and it's not like we don't know like, we meet the other leaders of the other courts, but it's, like, still very contained within the spring court.
Yeah, A Court of Thorns and Roses is so contained, and for a first book, that's what this
Helps.
needed to be,
Yeah.
and it wasn't by the end of it.
Yeah.
I felt like
It
it was okay contained as it was, probably for the first 60%, and then I
mhm.
felt like it spiraled a little bit after that.
Yeah. And it's a lot like, this book was a setup book, and I'm okay with that. How much of it is needing to do setup and how much of it is Alexis being like, "I should tell you everything," like
Mhm, mhm.
because I would want that too, like, I'd be pissed off if this guy who's, like, super noble and good held back, and
Yeah,
I don't think that that would it's hard, like, I don't have an answer for Carissa, plus it's already been published and it's done, so it's not like,
yeah,
anything could be done about it. I think it's within character of Alexis to tell her everything. He wants to be transparent, he wants to tell her everything, he doesn't want to, like, bed her under,
yeah.
like, misguided thoughts and impressions. So that makes sense, but then, like, how do you merge the 2, right?
Yeah, I think for me, I would've challenged, like, if I was Carissa's editor and I could go back in time, I think I
Yeah.
would challenge her to find a different way to tell the gods' story through structure. You
Yeah.
know how in Fourth Wing, how there's always a little bit of the Book of Brennan at the
Yep, yep,
start of each chapter?
yep.
I would have done something like that, or I would have done, like, chunks of the story at the start of each part or
Yeah.
something, and then have it and we don't know who's telling this story until we get to that part of the novel, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, Alexis has been telling us the story the whole time."
Oh, I like that a lot. I'm gonna steal that.
I've always wanted to do something like that. I think it's very difficult to do.
Yeah. I'll give you credit, I promise. No, but I mean, that's a good idea though. Like there's other ways of doing this, right?
Mhm,
Whether it's that way, whether it's having the Wraith divulge some information, whether it's having the general divulge some information,
mhm.
whether it's the evil king divulging information while he's in her head. Like there's a lot of things that can be spread apart. But I like the idea of authors doing the brain exercise of saying, how do I go outside the standard linear book? And that's
Yep.
not on a Carissa note. That is
Mm-mm.
a every author note. That's an even ourselves author note.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, completely. I think to keep things linear, I understand sometimes when we as authors are writing a fantasy novel, linear is best because you're
Yeah.
working on so many different aspects that are so difficult to write. Fantasies are very difficult to write. And I do think overall I enjoyed The Witch Collector as a fantasy book. However, I think adding a little bit of complexity to break up what would be an info dump,
yes,
to add sophistication to the narrative is worth the endeavor. We've seen it in things like the 5th season in Fourth Wing, and again in Iron Flame. You know, it's not something that Yaros came up with herself. Plenty of other novelists have done it, but I think it added a level of sophistication to her writing that didn't exist without it.
I agree. You know, and I don't know Charissa's other books, so I don't know her other writings as much. I think that this was, I don't know if this was her first book or not, but it was a good book. Like, I think, you know, for all the things that that we're talking about, I still very much enjoyed this book. And I would like to imagine that she has the skill and ability to do that sophistication that you're talking about. You know who I feel like I have absolute confidence doing, and she kind of did a little bit of it, is Charissa Broadbent. She can do no wrong. I feel like she could do, like, picture your idea, Amy, and she'll run with it. She'll do it. I have full faith in her.
I mean, she's already kind of done it
with
the Wings of Night.
Yep. Which she did. Never mind.
She did. Yeah, she did it at the
She
start.
did it even at Herbert. God, she's so cool. Just love her all over again.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just read a couple of funny comment. I would do terrible things for Alexis. You know what? Who I'm wrong. There are people who that's their book boyfriend.
Yeah, and you know what? It's because he's not problematic, and that's a good thing.
We should want that. I will say though that this person says the series really grows really well. I think the first book was good, but the second one is great. I did see a number of people say that to us. They said that that the second book is absolutely phenomenal and, you know, definitely worth the read to continue. And maybe that's like the same thing with an ACOTAR, although ACOTAR, we will, you know, that'll be our hill to die on, is that first book was incredible.
But part of it is because we know how much it sets up for the second book.
So maybe that's like once we go into the second book and stuff. I had someone DM'd us and they're like, the first book is for Jack, the second book is for Amy. And I don't know what that means.
For this book?
Yeah. They're like, the first book is Jack, the second book is for Amy. And I'm like, what? What?
Now I'm curious.
I don't know if I'm insulted.
You shouldn't be.
I'll reserve that. We'll see.
I reserve the right.
I reserve the right to be insulted if I so wish.
Oh, one of the comments, I think this is funny, thought it was weird that they started getting sexy while her sister was quote unquote watching them.
That's so true. That's so true. That's, you know, fair play.
Thanks, sister, for creating this little oasis for us in the middle of the snow. Now watch us get our freak on.
Can't wait to sleep with your friend.
I mean, not that I think Nephili could actually see them.
Yeah.
I feel like it was more of a sense thing, but I don't know. But if you're sensing your sister get freaky with your friend, that's also a little strange.
It is. Okay, so Evelyn did say, my cousin, the fact that he was some magical dude and he made the magical knife was just too coincidental.
I actually disagree. I don't feel like, I mean, I could see it coming. It didn't bother me. I felt like the reveal was slow enough.
And then how much of it is the reason why he was drawn to her is that he was drawn to the knife.
Yeah. Which I think he kind of also says.
Yeah. I think when it comes to books, it's such a fine line between coincidental and plot, and that's what, like, everything, and you're not going to write about something that's just going to not make sense. Like, it has to, like, you know, be streamlined. I understand the general feeling that if you're already kind of struggling with the whole book of like, this is just kind of dragging and everything, then I get that. I agree. I mean, just because something is predictable doesn't make it bad.
Right. I think the question is, was it earned? And I feel like there was enough work done to allude to the connection. I felt like there was enough that I didn't feel like it was unearned. I didn't feel like
Yeah.
this was something that came out of left field and was a convenient way to fill up a plot hole. I
What
felt
about
like
Neri being trapped in him? What are your thoughts there? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like you're on a roll and I wanted to see
oh,
if that roll would continue.
that was also obvious to me at the beginning.
Oh,
Not
at
that
the
it was
very beginning.
Neri specifically, but he explicitly Alexis, like in the first chapter of his point of view, explicitly states how he doesn't have access to his magic, and there was something about it that I was like, he's using it for another purpose to
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
guard the darkness inside him.
Yeah.
And so that set up, like, I always knew he was using his magic to keep something locked up inside him. I
Yeah.
always knew what it is. So it was not surprising to me that it ended up being a god.
Oh, I didn't catch that at all. Good job.
Oh, really?
You're a good reader.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, once it came to it, I wasn't like I wasn't surprised. I don't think I guessed it, but I wasn't surprised of like, oh yeah, you have a god trapped in you. This seems on brand. Uh I loved that it was Neri, the god she hated,
Mm-hmm.
inside of him. Him releasing Neri at the end of the book, would that have been the big bang moment that people were looking for if we had known about Neri being trapped inside of him earlier? Because we find out explicitly that Neri's trapped inside of him. This is really like he is using all his power to keep him inside. And then just a few chapters later, he lets him go.
He bargains with him.
Yeah, but he lets him go. Like Neri's
Right.
out of him now. But it goes from like, that's a high stake thing, right? Is
Yeah.
I use every inch of my power to keep this god contained. I live my life now to keep this god contained. And then to like and that's like a high thing. Like that's like a fair.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that would have been also good information to when we realize like, oh shit, he's going to use a little bit of his power. The cages are rattled. Neri might get out, and then for him to release it, that might have been a good earlier plot point and threat, high stake thing to have.
Well, I guess I'm confused because I felt like that happened when he kind of blew up the Eastlanders
Yeah.
and created that crater, right? And Reyna shows up even though he tells her to stay away. And she doesn't know how he unleashes that power. But he's like, when I'm in that state, I could kill you.
Yeah, but it's not said explicitly what it is.
Yeah.
Like we don't know at that point of like, holy shit, he almost let Neri out.
Yeah.
We just know, oh, he's powerful and he might hurt her. And I'm like, that's called a Tuesday in fantasy books. Like, give me something more.
I guess for me, because I had figured out there was something in him and that was the thing that had caused the explosion. And that was the thing that would kill her if she got too close to him in that state. I guess I felt like I'd already seen those stakes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I think it's also fair that like, since the general consensus is like, not general, but like a lot of the comments that we saw was like, what was happening? What was the plot? It would have been good to see maybe him struggle with Neri more other than that one moment.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it would have been nice if he's been struggling with Neri for hundreds of years inside him, for some of that control to be wearing down.
Yeah.
And for Neri to surface more unintentionally, and maybe for Alexis to not even be aware of it. Like, I do agree with that. I agree that would have raised the stakes for all of us, and it would have made him being unleashed and Alexis choosing to unleash him more impactful.
Yeah. And that would have been a good, just a little pizzazzing, little something there to kind of add that high stakes in the middle.
Yeah. I tried to shimmy and instead I just rocked the entire desk.
I figured that is what you were trying to do. Overall, like, yeah, there's notes. Yeah, there's things I might have, like, if it was just my book, I would change it. And I don't think that's like, that doesn't speak to what a bad book is or a good book is. Like, I do this exercise with every book so that I can figure out what I'd want to do.
Yeah.
But I've read 77 books this year, and Witch Collector stands out. I really enjoyed The Witch Collector.
Yeah, I think there were some things that were done so well.
Yeah.
That made me really appreciate this book that I have no doubt that I will go finish the series.
Yep.
Unlike some other books we've done for book club where I don't need to read more than the first book. This book, I am curious about what happens. I do like the dynamic between the characters most of the time. I do like our main female character. I like her rage. I like her disability. I like the way that the author is handling these things. And so I do want to keep reading. And I think it's a great start to our winter book club.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's set in winter.
There's snow.
Such a random thought. I know we were wrapping up, but I had a random thought. I feel bad for the sister when we find out that her lover king can now go see Thea, his ex-lover. And it's like, you're immortal? My first thought would be like, shit. Don't go back and see her, the person that you fell in love with for one afternoon 300 years ago.
Yeah. That actually will be very interesting to see how that plays out.
I'm curious to see if there's more POVs in the future or if we're going to get these storylines played out on the side.
Yeah.
Which I'm okay either way.
Yeah. I think it depends on what happens next. I guess my hope would be that there is a little bit more substance to the plot in the next book.
Same. Which I think there's been plenty of setup for it.
Yeah. Tons of setup for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we'll be discussing Guild by Raven Kennedy.
We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. If you'd like to submit your take on any of the books we plan to discuss later this winter, please be sure to follow us on Instagram, where we ask for listener submissions.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle booktalkforbooktalk. Bye.
Do you have a little bit of time?
Yeah. Should I stop recording?
No. This is going to be for Patreon. I want to tell you about a book I read.
Okay.
So, this was I went into looking for a book. Did you read my book review that I did for this? Okay, good. So this is the one I did review. I've been looking for a dark romance, and I want it dark, because every single dark romance I've read lately is like, but he kills people to save children and to save women. And I'm like, no, killing someone isn't enough to make it dark romance for me anymore. I don't care if he enjoys the killing. I don't care how he kills them. Like, I want a true and utter brutal dark romance.
Yeah. I'm gonna text you one. I'm going to text you one after you tell me your story.
Okay. So I found one, and I've seen it on TikTok, and I've seen it being like, people really don't like this one. And I'm like, all right, let's see what's going on there. And it's called Little Stranger. And I'm going to tell you
the title.
The title is actually really bad, but I'm going to tell you the concept, and I feel like you'll love this shit. So I read it on Kindle, and it's about